Hello and welcome to my podcast. Today I will discuss to what extent residential quality improves, according to the Index of Residential Quality, the closer to the CBD, the Central Business District. I hypothesized that the further you move from the CBD, the worse the residential quality becomes because the buildings in the CBD are used regularly and are therefore better taken care of. Another reason I hypothesized this is because we did a test trial near the CBD, and during that the area scored high on the Index of Residential Quality. The area of interest for this study is the city of Dresden. Before we start, it is important to know some of Dresden's geography and history because they might impact the results. Dresden is located in the east of Germany and is the capital of the state Saxony. Dresden lies next to the river Elbe on both sides and has a population of almost 530,000 people. With that, it is the third largest city in East Germany, after Leipzig and Berlin. The city was founded in 1216, although it was the Slav village of Dresden at the time. A major event which changed the city structure completely was the firebombing of Dresden on the 13th and 14th of February 1945 by the Allied forces in World War II. Large parts of Dresden were destroyed, and around 35,000 people were killed. About 13 square kilometers of Dresden had to be rebuilt, which changed the entire structure of the city, as it had to be rebuilt from ruins around everything that was still standing. After this brief introduction about Dresden, we can start with the data collection and the results. The data was collected in the form of a survey, which was filled in at different tram stops of multiple tramlines throughout Dresden. The CBD of Dresden is at the tram stop Postplatz, from which groups set out to collect the necessary data. In order to analyze data considering the direction from the CBD, I chose to compare data from tramlines 1, 3, 7, and 11. With those tramlines, I can cover all general directions and can therefore analyze the data accordingly. The first direction traveled was north. The data was collected with the tram number 3 towards Widermann. As can be seen on the graph, the residential quality is very high close to the CBD, but then decreases as the tram moves away from the Central Business District. So far, my hypothesis is correct. Then, however, the quality suddenly increases a large amount, staying equally high for the rest of the trip. This does not fit to my hypothesis at all, since I expected the quality to decrease further and further. The next direction traveled to was towards the northeast, and data was collected by tram number 7 towards Weixdorf. For this direction, no pattern is clear, as can be seen on the graph, although it might be due to the lack of data. Next time, data should be collected more regularly for all tramlines, even if it is a very long line and not many stops are needed in total. Also, more data from this direction could be used from different tramlines in order to have a variety of data still in the same direction. Tramline number 11 towards Bühlau runs exactly east of the CBD. For the first 3 kilometers, the data collected decreases and the quality of index therefore too. This supports my hypothesis, but after those 3 kilometers, the quality jumps up and then only slowly decreases again, not supporting my hypothesis at all. This can be especially seen in the bar graph as shown on the screen, where the bars go from being very high to lower and then starting up from high again, which represents the residential quality of the area and the distance towards the CBD. The tramline I analyzed, which goes towards the southeast, is the tramline number 1 towards Polis. However, not a clear pattern is distinguishable, as can also be seen on the graph, because the quality of living, or the residential quality, stays high throughout the data collection. Tramline number 11 traveled towards Chernitz, which is to the south of the CBD, and it has a very similar pattern as the number 11 which traveled towards the east of the CBD. The residential quality start out quite high in the CBD and then become lower after 2 kilometers, then however jump up again and even increase during the data collection. Tramline number 3 towards Koschutz, to the southwest of the CBD, follows a very similar trend as tramlines number 11 towards Bühlau and Chernitz. The residential quality decreases from the CBD, but then jumps up after 3 kilometers and increases rapidly, however then again after 5 kilometers decreasing. The repetition of this pattern shows that it might be a trend which is starting to occur over the south and the southeast directions of Dresden. The directions west and northwest traveled by tram number 7 towards Penrith and tram number 1 towards Leutewitz do not have any clear distinguishable patterns, although the tram number 7 starts out with a very low residential quality, which then increases, decreases, and so on. Tram number 1, however, the whole pattern stays pretty much equal and very high throughout the whole data collection. This concludes the data collection for all of Dresden's directions from the CBD. Some possible theories can be concluded from this data. One is that my hypothesis is partly correct, since in the majority of the data, the residential quality decreases a few kilometers after the CBD, and the other data doesn't present anything which evidently speaks against this. However, my hypothesis cannot be completely correct, because the quality starts to increase again after a few kilometers. An explanation for this theory would be as follows. The residential quality in the CBD itself is high due to the more regular use, as I suspected. The quality of the city immediately around the CBD is low, because it had to be hastily rebuilt to accommodate the survivors after the city was bombed. This would also show and prove the decrease of residential quality directly after the CBD. Once the city was more or less rebuilt, however, houses were built around the city and where there was still space left. These houses had better quality because they weren't built in such a rush and were planned more carefully to hold for a long period of time. This causes the sudden increase of quality in the areas directly outside the original city of Dresden. Finally, some parts of the city are wealthier, and so are the people who live there. This means that they can afford to keep the residential quality up with more ease, causing the consistently high data in some directions of Dresden. Some mistakes during the data collection and analysis of it, which should be improved next time, are that the data collected was subjective. It was dependent on the person who did the survey, and every person might perceive the amount of damage done to a building differently. Also, more data at different stops and distances should be collected, as some distances didn't have any data at all. Finally, a larger variety and larger range of data should be collected in order to prevent things from happening, like for example missing data like in tramline number 7. That concludes my podcast. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.